But it was horrifying. It was frightening. I don't want to relive it. I don't want to do it again.
That was Danny Colosimo in March of last year, describing his feelings after the Magna earthquake that damaged his business, and it really shook us all, no pun intended. We want to welcome you to our In Focus discussion tonight. Yesterday was the 10th annual Great Utah Shakeout. What are we talking about here? It's the annual event, serves as a reminder that Utah is in an earthquake zone and that Utahns need to be prepared for the absolute worst. If anything, taught us that it was last year, right? So we want to talk about the program with the Department of Emergency Management, where the idea came from, what they've learned over the past 10 years, what you can do, most importantly, I think, to prepare for the next earthquake. Joining us now are Bob Carey, Mitigation and Recovery Bureau Chief for the Utah Division of Emergency Management, and Wade Matthews, the Be Ready Utah Section Manager, also from Emergency Management. Bob, Wade, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. So Bob, making earthquakes interesting is not that hard now. We had one in the recent history of Utah. Talk about the genesis of the project and how did it come to be?
So Shakeout is a program that came out of the Southern California. It's the Southern California Earthquake Center was the agency in California that started Shakeout. And this was back in 2010. They basically brought this to a program that I work with, was the Earthquake Program Managers meeting, brought that to us. We worked on it for a couple of years in its infancy, and then we really broke this out to a bigger program in 2012, where we went from basically just trying to do this with the schools to bring it into business and into the general public, to get them more aware of the fact that we do live in earthquake country. Having had the Magna earthquake actually helps validate why we have been doing this. This particular earthquake was exactly the type of earthquake that I'd been wanting to have. It didn't hurt anybody. There wasn't any casualties, relatively little damage compared to the big one. So people can understand now the urgency to start doing that preparedness stuff, and the Shakeout is perfect to bring that to the table for them each year that we've been doing this since in earnest since 2012.
Well, as toilet paper started to fly off the shelves and we couldn't get disinfectant wipes, you started to realize the wisdom of the folks who may save up supplies for a rainy day, if that's not your thing, if you're just trying to get through the day. So now you're saying be prepared for this earthquake, but if folks don't listen, I imagine the Shakeout is sort of an annual reminder, right, to be prepared. I mean, what's the purpose of the Shakeout?
Yeah, so the purpose of the Shakeout is to, as Bob said, remind people that we do live in earthquake country, but also probably a higher priority to teach people the life-saving protective action for earthquake, and that's drop, cover, and hold on. A little catchphrase that we've created over the years, kind of similar to stop, drop, and hold. Stop, drop, and roll for fire, but drop, cover, and hold on. That's life-saving protective action. And we want everybody to know that. That's what's going to save lives when the big one hits, the Wasatch Fault. Get underneath the desk, table, a chair, hold on till the shaking stops. And the Shakeout drill every year provides an opportunity for people to practice that, for people to reinforce that with their family members and loved ones, with their colleagues. The Shakeout is for everybody. And so it's just simply a short drill. We have an imaginary shaking, imaginary quake, and everybody, wherever you are, at 10:15 on the third Thursday of April, you drop, cover, and hold on. That's the main point.
We have so many smart people working to forecast volcanoes and weather, but it seems like these earthquakes, they come out of nowhere. I mean, if you could plan on a place to be when an earthquake happens, is there a best room, or is the reason you're doing the Shakeout is to say, when this happens, here's what you do? Bob, can I ask you that question?
Sure. I think what you look at is you don't get to choose where you're at during an earthquake. You have to be aware of your surroundings. So basically, the idea here is that when the ground starts to shake, you look for those areas where you can take cover, where you can actually protect your head and shoulders. So underneath a table, underneath a chair, something to that effect, because you just don't know when this event's going to happen. And again, this is an earthquake that, conveniently was at, a little after 7 o'clock in the morning, where you had people in transit, you had people still at home, you had people already at work. So it's important for you to as you just think about this, you don't have to be apprehensive about it. Just be clever about the places that you see around your office, your home, and places like that, so you can be able to quickly get yourself underneath something that can protect you from falling objects. Because I think there's less likely a building failure in an earthquake that causes injuries. Most of the injuries in an earthquake come from what's inside the building, what's inside the room. So that's where most of your injuries come from. It's just not from collapsing buildings and those types of things. So that's, I think, a kind of a fallacy in what people believe is how an earthquake works. Building failure, a complete building failure is less than 1% of the building stock. So you're really protecting yourself from your immediate surroundings inside the building.
Wade, I know we're going to talk about safety later in this newscast, but can we talk about last year's shakeout? It was the start of the pandemic. It was on the heels of the Magna earthquake we just talked about. How did they affect the 2020 shakeout?
Well, absolutely. It definitely it affected it in our participation, probably. The last several years, we've had a goal of 1 million participants. 1 million people signed up and registered to participate in the Great Utah Shakeout, and we've reached that goal the last couple of years. But last year, 2020, I think due to the pandemic, we had a little bit of a drop in our participation. That number's gone up again, so we're gradually climbing back upwards towards that 1 million goal. This year we had about 725,000 people participate. And so, yeah, with the pandemic going on, we probably couldn't give it as much attention as we have in other earlier years, non-pandemic years. Anybody that registers for the Shakeout at shakeout.org/Utah, they'll get reminder emails. They will get phone calls. In fact, we have a team of people that will start making phone calls as we approach Shakeout and remind them to register for Shakeout. Typically, that's for larger organizations. Some of our biggest participants are schools. Obviously, teaching children to drop, cover, and hold on in an earthquake is probably one of the best things we can do as far as earthquake preparedness and protect those young lives. So we make phone calls to school districts, and they're probably some of our biggest participants. But we are, again, starting to see that participation go up again this year.
Drop, cover, hold on.
Right.
All right. Bob and Wade, thank you so much. We're going to take a quick break, but we're not done. We're going to continue the conversation about the Great Utah Shakeout. Stay with us.
Up here at the state capitol, we believe that state employees should be ready to respond because we're going to have critical missions to do in the aftermath of a major earthquake. So we want to make sure that we know how to take care of ourselves, that we evacuate with our emergency supplies, we take accountability, and then we can get right back to work.
That was Joe Doherty from the Division of Emergency Management back in 2019. We've talked to him a lot since then. He was talking then about how the state employees at the Capitol prepare for earthquakes. All about preparation, right? Thank you for staying with us tonight for our second In Focus discussion. It's on the Great Shakeout here in Utah. We're going to pick up right where we left off in our conversation with Bob Carey, Wade Matthews of the Department of Emergency Management. So Bob, this isn't just a process for the public. I mean, emergency management folks, you go through training during the shakeout as well. It has to be also basic, but probably a little bit more involved. Talk about that.
Well, the shakeout itself is a drill, and that's the idea behind it is for us to be able to understand how to protect ourselves in the event that this happens. But most of our shakeouts that we've had, we've also tied in some type of an exercise. The first shakeout we did, we had a fairly major exercise with the Federal Emergency Management Agency as we were starting to work on our catastrophic earthquake plan. But in 2012, when we pushed this more to the public, shakeout more into the public, we held one of our own exercise, and it was a 3-day event. And we tried to put ourselves through the paces so that, because we haven't had a lot of disasters, this helps us and our partners, our state partners, as well as our local officials, to be able to work with each other in a non-stress environment so that we can practice, hone our skills, and to be able to make ourselves more ready to be able to respond to this event in the most efficient way that we can.
And Bob, I know that when folks do drills, the public might not think that emotions get involved or that it gets stressful, but you live through this thing, even in a drill. You probably learned some stuff. So what concerns you the most after these drills about an earthquake here in Utah?
The thing is because we don't have this event very often, I think people become complacent with it. And like I said, when we had this event, it was to me the right size, because it reinforces the fact that we have earthquakes and that we need to be cognizant of that. We need to be prepared for that. And it was, to me, of course, it was in a non-stressful way. Because I've been through earthquakes before. I pretty much knew what was happening when it happened. So I wasn't stressed out, but a lot of people did get stressed out. And I think a little bit of that comes from probably the lack of preparation. You feel vulnerable, you're not sure, the power goes out, and then you're kind of stuck because maybe your 72-hour kit, which is now a 2-week 72-hour kit, isn't up to snuff. So I think this is a good experience for us. It keeps it low key. People now have an opportunity to put that emergency supplies together to be able to feel a little more comfortable when this happens the next time, and it will happen the next time.
I have a lot of questions about emergency supplies and what to do in case of an earthquake. Again, we're going to get to that. I do still want to stick with the program, Bob. It's grown, right? I mean, we talked earlier about how many people participate every year, but I mean, who's doing this? Is it schools? Where are they located? How many businesses have signed up? And how are you continuing that outreach to try to reach more people?
Well, because of the nature of how the shakeout was brought together, it was kind of an infancy thing. We didn't have the website that we have now. Once we developed that website and then the promotional materials, then we were better suited to be able to reach out to a broader audience. So over time, because of these tools that we have now, we've been able to bring more people in to be able to participate in this. And last few years, we've been able to bring that number to almost a million people. And you know, in some places like California, that's not very much, but we bring 1 million people into doing the shakeout in Utah. That's about 1/3 of the population. Most places don't get that level of participation. So I think what we've been successful at is being able to get people to participate, understand why we're doing this. Having the Magna earthquake now basically reinforces why we do duck, cover, and hold. And I think that as we progress out of the pandemic and be able to bring us back to where we were before, I think we'll even see more people participating in this, and that's exactly what we're looking for.
Wade, the shakeout was yesterday, the 3rd Thursday of April. If folks didn't know about this, they're watching this right now. Can they still participate, or is it, hey, sorry, wait till next year?
Yeah, you'd think so, right? But no, absolutely. People actually can still register. You can still go to the website, shakeout.org/Utah, and register to participate in this year's Great Utah Shakeout. Yes, we set aside the 3rd Thursday of every April for that, 10:15 exactly, the time frame. But people can actually, you can do this earthquake drill any day, any time that works for you. You know, we want people to drop, cover, and hold on wherever you are at that time, that day and time you set aside, whether it be at home or work or school, because who knows where we're going to be when an earthquake hits. And we need to know, drop, cover, and hold on wherever we are at. And so, no, it's not too late. And anybody that registers will continue to add to that number of participation that we're tallying through the year. And then you can get a certificate for participation as well. So anybody that you know, likes those types of things, that's available to anybody that still participated yesterday or anytime in the future.
I think to reinforce that, we need a jingle maybe. Drop, cover, hold on.
Yeah, exactly.
Got to make it cool for the kids. Okay, we have more questions for the two of you. This is really interesting, and we want to be back in about 2 minutes to continue our conversation with Bob Carey, Wade Matthews on the Great Utah Shakeout.
Turns out the most injuries and loss of life in an earthquake actually come from things other than structures. They come from lights that shatter and fall. They come from furniture that tips over. They come from things that are attached to houses or buildings that cause the damage. And so getting under a table or something sturdy can protect you from those things.
That was then Lieutenant Governor, now current Governor, Spencer Cox, back in 2019, talking about the Great Utah Shakeout, how citizens here in Utah can be ready if an earthquake strikes. And boy, did we get a wake-up call last March with that Magna quake. All right, we want to welcome you to our third and final In Focus discussion tonight. It's the Great Utah Shakeout. Want to continue that discussion with Bob Carey, Wade Matthews of the Department of Emergency Management, and let's talk about what people can do to prepare for an earthquake. So I want to move through some of these quickly. Wade, if an earthquake hits, what should people do while it's happening? And not even if you're in your house. What if you're driving or at work or maybe at home?
Yeah, again, quickly, drop, cover, and hold on means get underneath the desk, table, a chair, hold on to the legs till the shaking stops. If you don't have anything like that, get up against an interior wall that doesn't have any glass overhead, picture frame, mirror, window, that type of thing, and just cover your head and neck with your arms and hands. While you're driving, try to pull over to the side of the road, not on the bridge or under an overpass or under power lines. Or tall trees. When you're in bed, stay in bed and just pull a pillow over your head. And I think that's what a lot of people didn't remember last March 18th, 2020, because the earthquake hit at nighttime, basically.
Way to follow up. What should people do immediately after the quake? Yeah,
you'll probably want, and we encourage people to do this in your shakeout drill too, but evacuate. Do an evacuation drill for shakeout, but in an earthquake, evacuate the building, assess the situation, make sure there's no damage, that it would be safe to go back into, take accountability, make sure everybody's safe. If you feel comfortable doing so, go check on your neighbors.
Bob, what should people look for in their houses? What can they do now to see if they're going to be safe?
So after the Northridge earthquake, the #1 injury from that earthquake was foot injury. This was because of things falling off the shelves and breaking on the floor. This was an earthquake that was in the middle of the night. People didn't have shoes by their beds. They get up to go find out how their house fared, and they cut their foot. So they should be looking for things that are going to fall over. Bookcases, TV sets, things like that, things that tie down, putting child-proof locks on cupboards that have heavy objects in them, things like that, because basically when this earthquake hits, it's going to throw everything, all your doors open, your cabinets open, the drawers are going to come out on the bigger earthquakes. And so you just kind of look at your house as if it was on wheels, and the types of things that you could see moving around. That gives you kind of a picture of the kinds of things that you're going to see going on during this earthquake. And then it also depends on how long the ground shaking lasts. The longer it is, the more damage you're going to see.
Well, yeah, then how long, speaking of length of time, how long should people prepare themselves mentally and literally prepare things to go without public services? That's a big deal after an earthquake. And Bob,
yeah, and that's one of the things too that you're going to find out is that your power is going to go out. More likely, you're not going to have water after the event. This is, again, coming back to our Be Ready Utah side of the house, being able to sustain yourself, and we would like to see that for a couple of weeks. It takes a long time, especially after big events, to start to be able to bring in those types of services that are going to help you. But you can count on the power. The power is going to go out, even if it's only for a few hours. It just depends on what the damage looks like moving away from the epicenter. So most utilities are going to have some form of an issue that you're going to have from this. So just to think about the things that you turning on that light switch, you just assume that's going to happen. When those go away, you have to then decide how you're going to compensate for that. And this is where having your emergency supplies and your backup supplies become very important.
So Wade, I'll give you this question. I'm your brother, I'm your good friend. I say, Wade, you're in this space. Tell me the truth. Do I need a generator? Like, do I need a generator, and what else can I do to make my house safer?
Well, I would say yes to that. As far as, you know, the power outage could be, as Bob said, weeks or even longer in some cases, depending on the magnitude of the earthquake. And especially if you have somebody in your family that's kind of on medical support, an oxygen concentrator, CPAP, or if you need to keep insulin cold and the power's out, a generator would be a great thing. There's other alternatives as well, solar power, those types of things. As far as making our home safe for an earthquake, one of the first things we recommend is check the water heater. Make sure it's fastened to the wall so it won't tip over, cause a gas leak, then possibly a fire. Now you have to evacuate and leave your home for sure. So do that. Fasten tall furniture to the shelves, to the walls, with L brackets or nylon straps. Move heavy objects from high shelves down to the low shelves, and make sure there's no objects over the kids' beds at night.
Wow, that is such a good reminder about the objects. Okay, 30 seconds for each of you. Final question, what should be in an emergency kit? Let's start with you, Bob.
Okay, so I think coming out of the Magna earthquake, it clearly shows that we actually can have these events, And knowing that we can have these events now, this helps kind of validate the fact that we know that there's a much bigger earthquake coming. That earthquake is going to be significantly different than the one that we just had. There's going to be lots of casualties. You're going to be without a lot of the things that you become used to. It's important for you now to take the time while we have it to be able to put yourselves in a much better position, doing your family plan on what you're going to do if you're home, what you're going to do if you're at school, at work. Those types of things, that's what I think you need to look towards.
I really appreciate Wade and Bob. I know we have to get wrapped up with this newscast. Such a fascinating discussion. Preparation, so important after last year's earthquake. We certainly appreciate both of you for being on our show tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.